Right, okay, as Pierre just pointed out, so delighted to be here with Georg L, who's General Manager of EMEA of Yammer. First of all, you yourself are half British, half German, half Portuguese, half Croatian. You were telling me, but you're European, I guess.
I'm definitely a European, yeah. So it's always fun at my house when the European Championships are on. We have many teams.
Can you imagine? Right, okay, so you're going to tell us, first of all, Georg, what exactly Yammer is, so that we can get some context of your contribution.
Sure, thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here in front of so many illustrious people from this audience. And I think we're going to change the theme a little bit for this 20-minute section, since so much focus has been on external social media and Facebook and Google Plus and so on. So Yammer is a 4-year-old company headquartered in Silicon Valley, really a startup that's just been acquired by Microsoft for $1.2 billion. And we focus on the use of social media communications mechanisms to actually help companies to communicate more effectively internally. So you can think of it as a social network for your business, for your company or your government department that is private to your organization, that is secure, of course, and principally for the internal communication amongst you. Can also be used for external communications, for example, to help people run events like this. I will try to, if it's working, yeah, just to show a quick screenshot to give you a sense of how this looks, just for a visual reference point. Yammer was built in the cloud. It's an internet technology consumable through the web, through mobile devices. And the intention is it's very quick to pick up and use. So users should be immediately familiar with the paradigm, with the principle of posting messages, of replying, following, liking, being able to do so from every device. And then, of course, what we're trying to do is take this into the enterprise, which means you need enterprise search, you need to be able to link into other systems, pull data in from SAP, from Oracle, from Microsoft, and so on and so on. So we'll talk more about some specific examples about how that might work. What I do think is really, really interesting about this is that we've taken a very consumer technology approach to building it, which means that it's very data-driven at the back end, very, very fast innovation, so we release new features every week, which means that your users experience now in their daily working life technology which is current and up-to-date and modern from the perspective of what they experience in the consumer world as well, and they can use that to start to communicate more effectively internally.
Yeah, just a general question. Is it something that's nice to have? It looks cute and everything, or does it actually add value?
It's a very fair question. We're definitely seeing a revolution in the communications outside of the workplace. The whole purpose of this conference, in a sense, is to talk about new ways of reaching out to people and interacting with them. That is happening inside the enterprise as well. We are the fastest growing and, in fact, the first mover, if you like, in this space, with more than 6 million users now, enterprise users, in companies right around the world, in places like Capgemini, in Shell, in organizations like Deloitte. We'll talk about maybe some French customers as well. The key thing here is being able to differentiate from the use of external social media where people will collaborate with friends or they communicate with brands, and really to relate it to real work and projects and communicating with colleagues, finding expertise, reducing cycle time in the production of a marketing brief or a brand campaign. We have customers that use Yammer, for example, to facilitate teams that are involved in real-time media buying activities, where in the past they might have all sat around on conference rooms or instant messaging or email, God forbid, and now they're actually creating a group within the Yammer environment and bringing a global media buying team together to be able to do that in real time. There's sort of evidence that we've gathered from working with many of the world's largest organizations that there's really 4 buckets within which companies start to use these technologies. Those are employee engagement, helping your staff to communicate more effectively with one another and, if you like, to feel connected to the internal brand of the company. It's around team collaboration, so great example being media buying, but might also be sales teams collaborating on an initiative or an engineering organization on a new product design. We even have, if you like, at Shell, some fairly esoteric use cases where the tanker captains on the big ships actually communicate in Yammer groups as well. It's just such a flexible technology. The third one I would say is around socializing the intranet, so taking your internal communications and bringing those right up to date, making them very interactive, so the intranet is no longer a sort of source of undisputed truth, but starts to become a place where structured data meets conversation. And then the final one is around business transformation. And so here we talk to CEOs and VPs of marketing, VPs of comms, around organizational rebranding exercises, landing those effectively. We talk about mergers and acquisition scenarios. I'm living this right now as I take our organization in Europe into the Microsoft company. How do you bring two cultures together? How do you bring two sets of teams together in a very fast and dynamic working environment to very quickly become effective? So from our perspective, this is all about business impact. It's not about wasting time. It may still be about company culture, but it is very much around getting real work done.
I'm not sure I understand this, though, because how can you make a company's internal social operations be extended to involve external clients, distributors, partners? How do you actually do that?
That's another great question. So we originally built Yammer to help companies communicate more effectively internally amongst themselves. But what we quickly realized was that there was no reason why these types of communications mechanisms should be limited to internal use only. So we built a capability quite some time ago that would enable an organization to build external-facing networks that are separate from their internal, and to do that very, very quickly. So we call that the 30-second extranet. The business can set this up. There's no reliance on IT. And now you can set up these external networks with, it's got a life of its own. You can set up these external networks with your, I'll leave it, supply chain, with your customers, with your partners. We do this ourselves. So we actually run an external network, which we call the Yammer Customer Network, that has 4,000 people in it from 700 companies, customers of ours, talking about their use of Yammer and internal social media and representing IT, HR, communications, learning development, many different functions. So the benefit of that to our customers is that they can learn from one another, as well as interacting with us about the best practices. We have other clients like Capgemini, for example, that are starting to move into the sphere of actually using these external networks to communicate with their customers. We work with organizations in the media advertising space that, again, do this to work with their clients. So you might be responsible for the global brand of, let's say, a major global telco, and you might have 50 people that are working on that account right around the world, and we can connect those 50 people with the customer's 50 people in an external network. So you start to eliminate issues of key man dependency, people leaving the organization, all the communication stays in one place, people stay on one page. It's very quick and easy. The key thing is it's got to be easy to use. It's got to be something people can pick up very quickly and look down through the history, so you can ramp them up very quickly. And then, of course, we as an organization help through training, through education, through advice and guidance to try to make our customers very successful. Customer success being right at the heart of so much that we do.
How do you measure the success of ESNs?
So there's a whole body of work that we've built up, a very standardized now methodology, albeit we're learning all the time as well, so we're kind of trying to keep that very much up to date. Around how one starts with this. And the key thing is that it needs to be very, very iterative. So just like we build technology to be very data-driven, very iterative, try it, test it, measure the data against a benchmark, make a small adjustment, and start the cycle again. We advise our clients to do much the same thing, and we'll work with them on that front too. There's a lot of external research been done to support the notion that enterprise social networking has an extraordinary ability to drive transformational business change in companies too. So McKinsey did a great study, which is available actually, and I recommend all of you to go and look for this. It was published in August 2012, so it's very current, specifically on the kind of economy of enterprise social networking. And they believe that actually productivity amongst knowledge workers can be improved by between 20 to 25%. Simply by enabling them to be more effective in what they do today relative to using email and using the intranet to connect them to expertise, to search for answers, to find the answers to specific questions, to work on projects. And we see organizations realizing benefits in those four quadrants that I talked around around things like deduplicating effort. I mean, every large company experiences this, where actually projects are taking place in multiple places around the world, and often that effort is being duplicated, and people are reinventing the wheel. So what we're finding is that people are actually connecting with one another so much more naturally, so much more, they're finding and discovering, you know, things that are going on in the organization so much more organically through these social networks. What we're also finding is that the organizational development, the organizational hierarchy and dynamic of big companies is reflected in the products that build, and is reflected in the marketing campaigns that are designed. And actually, when you start to take a more network-centric approach to thinking about how you build and design, whether it's technology, whether it's product, whether it's a supply chain or it's a marketing brief, you find that ideas and inspiration actually come from all sorts of interesting places. So to give you one example, it's long been common knowledge that in the retail industry, you know, the people closest to the customer in the front line of the stores have a huge amount to say that's of relevance to, you know, the brand and of relevance to store design and the supply chain associated with that. But capturing that data out of their heads has long been, you know, highly structured and quite clunky, and frankly doesn't happen much of the time. So what we're finding is that by enabling people to actually use their mobile devices in the stores to simply go up to a piece of fantastic or a piece of terrible store design, take a picture and share it with colleagues, is just so much faster, so much more frictionless, that actually now that feedback is going up through the organization, being acted on and pushed back down into other stores so much more quickly. That's true of cabin crew in airline. It's true of drivers in trucks and logistics businesses that we work with, places like DHL. It's also true of knowledge workers in companies like Capgemini, where maybe these consultants go on site for 2 years and never make it back to head office because they're so embedded in the client. And it's, you know, it's just as true with brand and agency folks, that where inspiration can strike, frankly, at any time. Many of you will have been taking pictures of the previous presenter's slides as he was going through them and sharing those back into your organization in some manner. So my question to you would be, you know, how are you sharing the learnings and inspiration that you take from these few days back into your organization? Will you write an email, a long email? Will you embed some pictures in that? Will you write a blog on an internal website? Maybe you'll tweet about it, of course, and then you'll share it internally and with the outside world. Well, what we do and what our clients do would be, you know, lots of short updates throughout the day, lots of pictures, people asking questions of you to say, hey, that's interesting. Can you go find out more about that afterwards? So we, you know, we're here as part of the Microsoft stand. It's right outside the front door. Now, if you were yammering around this and found something I said interesting, someone might say, hey, can you go and ask those guys this question? And we're outside and we'd be happy to answer it. So that's, you know, that's a little food for thought.
Okay, can I ask you on one particular question? Everybody talks about, because you're cloud-based, as you said, security. As an issue, I've been asking people questions on, but it actually happened to me a month ago. My PayPal account for the first time was hacked. 1,400 euros was taken out. If I hadn't noticed it the day after, because they actually very cleverly put it onto an old email. They changed my email back to an old email, and I just happened to go on that the day after and noticed that 1,400 euros, if I hadn't have noticed that, I wouldn't have got the money back, basically. So I'm very, suddenly, personally, very aware about issues. You're cloud-based, what are the advantages? But there are risks, aren't there? And companies putting sensitive details on clouds. What can you tell us about that? It is an issue.
It's absolutely an issue. I've experienced something similar myself. My American Express card was cloned one Christmas a few years ago. The thief took his partner to Claridge's and spent £2,000 in the Gordon Ramsay restaurant. So at least the gentleman, I assume it's a gentleman, at least they had taste. And it took 6 weeks to retrieve that money back. And American Express actually alerted me to that at the time. We've seen Sony be hacked with the PlayStation accounts. We've seen LinkedIn be hacked. My Twitter account's been hacked. Twitter accounts of friends of mine have been taken over at various points in time as well. So it's a real issue. What all organizations that build in the cloud, so Microsoft, Google, Salesforce.com, and so on, need to take this issue incredibly seriously. Yammer is no different. We've built with security in mind from the very, very beginning. And with every single one of the significant clients that we work with, so Shell, AstraZeneca, Honeywell, Xerox, all of these companies for whom intellectual property is really at the heart of what they do, we've had very detailed and in-depth discussions with them around our approach to it. both from an engineering perspective and the human dynamics perspective, of course, the biggest failure of security in any organization is always the person, not the technology. So, I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm looking at you. It's probably not you at all. But I think this is something that is generally known to be true in the security community. So how can we help organizations to make sure that they're secure with the technology and with the human dynamics as well? So we take this issue very seriously. We deal with it. But we do have a deep commitment to the cloud. We feel that it gives us tremendous advantages that we pass on to our clients. Scale is one thing. It really isn't about scale. It's about two things, innovation and speed. If you show the business something that they want, if you show the business something that's exciting, that they can make transformational change with, the first question they will ask you is, great, when can I have it? And the answer with the cloud is either today, or, because actually Yammer has this quite interesting freemium business model that allows you to try this for free, and in the slide that it jumped to a moment ago, and which I'll end on, I'll show you where you can go to do that. The answer may be you already have it. So that's very powerful, and the cloud allows you to do that. But the second thing is, of course, because of this freemium approach, we do have millions of users that don't pay us any money, and those are important to us because we can test in that community. So I can stand in front of all of you and every client I speak to and say that every feature we've ever built and delivered has been first tested in our free community against a sort of benchmark to show that it statistically significantly improves the product in terms of user engagement and adoption with the technology. So that is not achievable any other way, and it's why we have such a deep commitment to it.
Pierre,
maybe a question from the audience? Do you want to tell something to Yammer? So, how much revenue do you make? How much
revenue do we make?
Yeah.
So as a previously privately held company, now subsidiary of Microsoft, I'm afraid we don't disclose the revenue figures, but I will tell you we just had another record quarter, which is, well, every quarter has been a record quarter. Okay. But the statistic we do talk about is 6 million individually authenticated enterprise users, which means that when we do that A/B testing, that is
how much revenue?
Meaningful audience. No. No comment.
Thank you. Hello, Maggie Buggy from Capgemini Consulting. My question is, in our experience of delivering large-scale digital transformation with enterprise clients, we're increasingly realizing that cultural shift is one of the main blockers to achieving the broad business case for digital transformation activities. And one of the things that we're using increasingly as part of our business proposition is application of gamification techniques to address behavioral change. Should we expect to see some collaboration or innovation in the space of gamification coming from Yammer and Microsoft? And if so, will that be a walled garden?
So it's a great question, or a couple of questions. Firstly, maybe just by quick show of hands, I'd be really interested to do a quick bit of market research and see how many people in the audience know what we mean when we say gamification. So that's a good number, but it's still about 50%. So let me quickly define it myself, and if you disagree with the definition, I'd love if you could jump in. But essentially what it is trying to take two aspects of human behavior, which is the innate desire for feedback, particularly positive feedback, and the innate desire to compete, and try to turn those two human dynamics into positive influences on how human beings actually interact with colleagues at work. Governments do this with kind of nudge theories as well, of trying to move people in line with government policy. And so there's all sorts of organizations out there. One that we actually partner with, to answer part of your question, is a company called Badgeville, who actually make a business of providing ways in which, and Badgeville do this both in terms of external social media as well as internal behavioral dynamics, to try to encourage people through competition and through reward to exhibit the right behaviors. We have some of this built in natively inside Yammer in the ability to actually issue a person with praise. So your CEO can praise you for a particularly good piece of work, and that's public. And then through APIs, so to your final part of your question, we actually are currently building an app ecosystem. We have more than 30 partners available today that will not be a walled garden. We're very deeply committed to interacting, or integrating, I should say, just as deeply with Microsoft as well as our third-party ecosystem vendors to enable, that example and others to actually interact with social. Social, in our view, should be a pervasive social experience that is not an application you go to do that, but it should be something that you can actually interact with wherever you happen to be in other places too.